Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Anarchist podcast. This is episode number 8. And with this episode, I think I want to take it back to the basics. Get back to the basics of anarchism, liberty, freedom, libertarianism. Because I feel the movement definitely getting flooded with conservatives who want to take upon themselves the term of libertarianism, calling themselves libertarians when they are nothing, in fact, libertarians. They're so far from it. And I was actually watching a video today, which I will link in this video description below. It was a debate on the effects of the legalization of marijuana in Colorado so far. And what I found very interesting in watching this debate was these two conservatives who were debating the issue. One guy who was actually wanting a bunch more regulation and wasn't even that happy about the legalization of marijuana, and then you had the other guy on the other side who was conservative, saying that he was all for the legalization of marijuana and likes the current state of the regulation, but both were calling themselves libertarians. And a libertarian will settle for legalization of marijuana, but we are no way happy about it, because with legalization of marijuana comes with taxation of marijuana, which means revenue for the state. And what a libertarian wants to give revenue and expand state power? I don't know one. That's not what libertarianism is about. Libertarianism is about shrinking government, if all, to a minimal, to none. To the individual rights and freedoms. And they also didn't even talk, well, they did mention it a bit about other drugs, but they're like, oh, we're not talking about heroin and stuff, though. This is just marijuana. But no, a libertarian would be for full decriminalization on all drugs. But we're going to get into that into this podcast. Also in the description box down below, you can find my Bitcoin wallet. This show is brought to you by you, the listeners. And it would be nice to have some support, some donations, so I can expand this podcast into something much bigger. Still only on episode 8. Still a new thing to me. Learning, hopefully getting better with each episode. But I would like to see if I could forecast this in the next 5 so years. I would like to see myself, studio with a group of guys, maybe some girls too. Have a nice whole media operation. Expand this out, because I feel we need more independent media out there. We are going to be the next future CNNs and MSN. These places, these mainstream medias are dead. They're a dying breed, and everyone gets their news basically on the internet now. So if people are searching news out on the internet, we got to make sure that we have news outlets such as libertarian activists like myself, to have big platforms like people like the Young Turks and the leftists have, because they have no problem donating, thumbs-upping their videos, the Democrats and the leftists. So we got to be just as strong here in the far right, the libertarian, the anarchism side of things, the small government. We have to be just as strong as them in supporting liberty activists by donating to them, helping them grow their platforms in any way. And if you don't have financial ability to do so, then simply liking the video and sharing it will help a lot as well. So like I said, and today I want to get back to the basics of anarchism, because like I said, I feel a lot of libertarians, and when I say libertarians and anarchists, they're basically the same thing. And I feel now the conservatives kind of trying to corrupt that libertarian and take it from us, take it from the voluntarists, and turn it into like some kind of small or medium government kind of thing. And that's not what libertarianism is about. So, and I just want to read right now for you guys the Webster's Dictionary of Anarchism. And I'm actually pretty impressed with it, because I think it's been updated recently. So the first small definition, I kind of am a little not happy about, but it says anarchism, a belief that government and laws are not necessary. Now, I have a little issue with that small definition, but when you actually go down to full definition of anarchism, this makes a lot more sense. A political theory holding that all forms of government authority to be unnecessary and undesirable, and advocating a society based on voluntary cooperation, free association of individuals and groups. And I think that best sums up what libertarians are, what we are calling for as a type of society we want to bring. And it is the true society that actually respects equality, the right of the individual. There is the left always like to jump on the bandwagon saying they're for equal rights. They're for all these far right movements like the gay people. They're for gay rights. They're for this rights. And libertarianism And anarchism is the best group if you're looking for equal rights. We're all about that, giving the right to the individual. We're even so friendly with our rights, and I wouldn't say radical, but most on the left would, that we believe in the right to choose how you spend your money too, the products of your labor. And this is why we run into an issue with the thing that we call the government in today's form. Now, like I said, the first definition I didn't really like, because it says the belief that the government and laws are not necessary. And anarchists do not believe that laws are not necessary. Anarchists obviously know that it is immoral to murder someone. It is immoral to steal. It is immoral to threaten someone and do all these other acts of violence and coercion against another individual. As long as you're not impeding on an individual, harming them, harming their property, anarchists, that's what we kind of believe. Peace, people. So when you start structuring a society based like that, you immediately raise the question on the taxation issue, because governments are just a group of people, and without the form of taxation, those people wouldn't have a financial incentive to go to work that day. They wouldn't have buildings to go to work into because they wouldn't be paid for. They wouldn't have the lights to keep those buildings and the plumbing and to keep all that stuff running. So taxes literally is the Achilles heel of the government. Without it, governments don't exist in their current form, and I'd say. So as an anarchist and as a young person who studies government and who got into politics, I quickly came to the question of taxation. And when you study it on an individual level, you just simply realize that it is people taking money from individuals to give services to the masses. And the only justification people on the left will make for that act of theft, that act of aggression against that peaceful person, if they do not consent to how in which you're going to spend their taxes, because pretty much everyone can agree. And here's one thing that I would at least try to agree with, try to get the left to agree with me on, is the left at least can agree that they don't like to spend money on wars. The right tends to like to spend money on wars. The left like to spend money on social welfare program stuff. The right, not as much sometimes, or stuff, whatever. So everyone that votes and everyone that left or right can at least agree on, here's a common ground. We do not agree where 100% our taxes go. So here's my challenge to you on the left. Why is it that you find it morally acceptable for a government institution to steal money out of your wages to fund wars that you do not agree with? Wars of aggression. Dropping bombs on little kids in other countries. Collateral damage. These bombs are not cheap. War is not cheap. Think of all the money that money could go elsewhere if you guys had the option to not pay for it. Same for people who homeschool their children who do not send their kids to school. Why are they forced then to pay for schools? Why are they forced to pay for a service in which they will never use? What about the man who is like off the gritter, who doesn't really want to ever use hospitals, and he'll just take care of himself off the land? Why is it when he runs in town, or if he works a little job or has a little mechanic shop, he's taxed and he has to pay for hospitals and stuff like that he may never use? Or a young person, why is it that a young person is billed and paid in taxes, has to pay for hospitals, and may never visit them? Shouldn't you only have to pay for... it would be a lot nicer if you could just pay when you needed to go to the hospital, because maybe you would only have to go one every couple years or so, or maybe even less if you're a healthy individual. You could rarely... I know I haven't been to a doctor in years. So why is it that individuals have to pay for services in which they don't use? And the left always make the argument, well, it's because it's to make it fair so everyone can have those services. And I would say right back to the left then, if all these people are so concerned with the poor, making sure that they have education, making sure they have health care, because if you go and ask the average individual on the street, hey, do you think poor people should have a right to education? Which, as an anarchist, I'm not going to get into that, my personal beliefs, but let's just say the average individual. I'm just going to try and go from their aspect of things. They would say, yes, I think poor people should have a right to an education. then there you go. That's some. If you are someone who cares about the poor, and the left is all about caring about the poor and caring about people having health care and getting their educations and all that stuff, then these people will no problem tomorrow, if the tax code is simply voluntarily now instead of forcefully taken from you, then they will continue to send their money that way to fund those programs. It just would be done in a charitable way instead of a thievery way, instead of taxing, instead of theft. Be a lot nicer way to do it. You'd be asking, hey, do you want to help these kids out, instead of, hey, you have to take these kids out. And I always taught as a children that the best interactions with human beings are done verbally and peacefully and not violence and coercive. And to not use your fist and try to use your words. But that's not how the government acts. The very root and meaning of government is simply that. Using their fist to accomplish what they want. Using violence and not using peaceful means and voluntary cooperation. The left likes to spout how they're all about peace and rights and everything. They're vicious. These people are calling for violence. These are the people who send the IRS after people. These are the people who, like I said, force people to pay for services they don't want to. And I find it very strange that me at a young age in my 20s that I am, have come to these conclusions and have realized and looked at government, understood very simply that, I know why we run into a lot of these problems that government has, but if you look in the free market seems to do fine. If a restaurant screws you over, you don't give them your money anymore and you go to the next restaurant down the road. If a bunch of cops beat you up, you can't call another cop station who's competing with them to take care of you next time when you're in a situation where you need some help. I think that's wrong. Because our government has a monopoly on policing right now, and they have an incentive to push the war, the drug war, put people in jail for victimless crimes. There are literally police stations with their back rooms full of rape kits that are unprocessed because they're too busy out there writing speeding tickets and chasing down nonviolent drug offenders. Because of the existence of government, women get raped and don't have justice. Rapists go free. Because of government, there is war. Because of government, little children get bombed and drone striked and blew into a million bits and smithereens violently from collateral damage. Because of government, we could have better health care and better cures for diseases and stuff because of all the regulations and rules that government place on stuff to keep innovation from happening. Literally, government's existence every day results in rape and murder and pillaging of millions and millions of people. Government is one of the most vile, nasty things that you could ever bring into existence as a way to structure society. Our founding fathers knew that when they wrote the Constitution. They were just a little too naive and a little, I think, behind their times. They didn't have the beautiful things such as the internet, all the world's resources at my tips of my fingers, all the philosophy books and politics and all that stuff at the tips of my fingers. They didn't have that stuff, so I can kind of understand in a sense where their ignorance came from. But we don't have that today. People choose to be ignorant now. And people know damn well that the drug war is a failed war, that there are drugs literally in prison. If you can't keep drugs out of prison, you'll never keep them out of America or out of any country. And because of this war on drugs, houses get raided, swats, kicked down doors, families torn apart. Government is a vile beast. Like I said, our founding fathers knew this. You can pull out quotes of the people who created America telling people in the future, you got to watch this thing. If it gets out of check, it will enslave you. And it has enslaved us. And it has gotten out of check. See, people always like to say the founding fathers wrote in Canada, same thing. We got the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Charter of Rights. But yet you can point out scenarios in which each one of those Bill of Rights, Charter rights, constitutional rights was violated by the government. So clearly they do not matter. And how many times must they be violated before you realize this institution has gotten too corrupt? How many rape kits need to go unchecked? How many families need to be ripped apart by CPS because their mother or father might have smoked a joint? But if they had a glass of wine beside their kid, that would be socially acceptable. People do not understand how dangerous and the casualties on a daily basis that result in the belief in this thing called the state. And it is why I rail against it. And it is why I'm so hostile when I see conservatives getting on C-SPAN, claiming to be libertarians, debating amongst themselves on the regulations of the legalization of marijuana, so far from libertarian values, but masquerading as them. And I see them slowly corrupting the movement. Just like I do not believe that all this race baiting and PC culture is not by accident. The libertarian movement was growing leaps and bounds because we have narrowed into our philosophy so well that it is hard to debate us. To argue against us is to argue for violence. And because our arguments are so solid now, the government and the left have nothing left to do now. Their only card left to play now is to try and take the heat off, try to move the conversation off of government. And what did they do? Stir up racial division, stir up the PC culture, the social justice warriors. And it's worked. 1 year ago, all my liberty activist people I tune into nonstop every day basically railed on the powers of the state and how evil and corrupt it was. Now we're pretty much all, even myself guilty, are talking about racial issues, social justice warrior issues, trannies, and which bathroom they can piss in. This is what our conversation has devolved into. And it is not by accident. I think it has been cooperative and done. That's why the news focuses on it, and we must try to push it away. Stop covering it. Whether a tranny, a man, born a man, in a wig, with a penis, wearing a dress, wants to piss in a girl's bathroom is a non-issue. Clearly he should stay in the fucking male bathroom. He's a man. And the fact that this is what we see as discussed in the media is disgusting, that this is what our society has devolved to. And it's just a distraction mechanism. And we must be aware of it, and we must treat it as such. And we shouldn't give it any kind of platform. We should move past it and get back to the issues at hand. And that's why I'm calling this podcast Getting Back to the Beginning. Getting back to the roots of anarchism and why we're here and why we do what we do in these podcasts. Because every day we bicker about social justice warrior issues and we're giving them what they want. We're not railing about the Fed. We're not railing about the fake money. That if we all switch to Bitcoin currencies and get off the government's currency, well, they'd cease to exist. How could you tax someone if they had a Bitcoin wallet? How could you fund wars when there's only a 21 million cap on Bitcoin and you can't print money and put it onto the debt of your unborn child to fund the next generation's war? We got to get back to the core issues. And I've been watching a lot of Star Trek lately. You might say, what is that relevance? And it's very interesting to watch the TV series Star Trek, and I'd encourage any of you listeners who are into that kind of geeky stuff and like space, and maybe watch them when you were younger, just go back and watch them now as you're a little bit more awoken to politics and anarchism and all these things we talk about. Because Gene Roddenberry and the creators of Star Trek did a very good job, I think, at portraying what humanity would look like in the future in the 23rd, 24th century. It kind of looked like an anarchist society. Did they have no rules? Absolutely no. Star Trek and the Federation had very strict moral rules. the prime directive and such. But they were structured their society and their rules around moral principles and individual rights. And they would never sacrifice the individual. Everything done on those star crafts that they flew around in those series and stuff, they were always doing them voluntary and in consensual contracts with individuals. Nobody was forced to do anything. And the men carried themselves with honor. And I don't see that anymore. I don't see honorable men being encouraged in our society anymore. Any cop, any grown man cop, I feel, who shoots a dog is a coward in my book. Because I've been around dogs my whole life. Even aggressive ones. You are an ape. You are a monkey. You are a human being, and you're telling me you couldn't handle yourself with a dog that you had to shoot it? Our ancestors used to hunt wild boar and lions. There are still tribes right now that hunt lions with sticks. And you see cops shooting chihuahuas running at them. It's disgusting. What a sick society of wimps. We've lost our honor and we've lost our strength. It wasn't honorable to touch or beat a woman because you knew you had the strength and the power over that woman. Men are just naturally stronger. But you see all kinds of occasions where male cops will be beating up a woman. There's no honor in that. Even if she was being violent against you, you could still hold her. But I've seen videos that one that went all too famous there where that cop was just wailing on that woman's face on the highway there. Disgusting. Coward. And we're just breeding a society of cowards. And the left has run amok, and the social justice warriors have run amok, and they've divulged our culture down to tranny talk and all this other bullshit. Which bathroom can they piss in? Can they go in the girls' or boys' bathroom? Gender neutral. Oh, racist. If you talk about facts, you're racist. It's ridiculous. And it is all purposely done. And we're falling right into their hands. Sorry about that. I had to get a drink there. So, continuing, as I was saying. There is no left, no right. There is only authoritarianism and freedom. And that's all the conversation should be. That's all we should ever allow it to be. There's freedom or there's slavery. There's the individual right or there's not. And once we bring it back to the individual, we can structure our society in a rightful manner. And I don't think it's too radical to assume that we can successfully pay for schools, that we can successfully pay for roads, that we can successfully pay for health care for the poor, and all these other things by putting the guns down, by putting the fist down, and talking about it. Asking for it, cooperating, being peaceful, being voluntary. It's voluntary interactions that has brought us everything that is great that humanity has ever done. If you go and sit right now, and if you were driving in your vehicle and you look down, everything has been done by cooperation in that vehicle. The tires were designed and created by someone. The speed, the speedometer, the tachometer, thing that keeps the speed of your car. Even the mathematics behind to calculate your speed and travel. An individual created that. The gasoline that goes in to fuel it, an individual had to invent and create that. Without human cooperation, we would be in the Stone Ages. We see that when we are peaceful and cooperate with each other, when we talk things out, instead of violence and coercion and forcing things on people to be paid for. We see it works a lot better when it's done voluntarily. The healthcare sucks. And it sucks because government has a monopoly. The court system sucks. It's because they have a monopoly. Basic economics will teach you when one thing, one entity, one person, one corporation controls the entire market, the incentive for that corporation or that individual or that business to keep a good business going, to keep his customers happy, he doesn't have a very good incentive because he knows he has the market. He has it all. Where else are you going to go? It's competition that breeds accountability. Like I said, in every scenario, if you get pissed off at any store you shop at, any restaurant or anything, you choose to not do business with them later on. They don't thrive. Bad businesses go out of business. Bad government doesn't, because their bloodline is taxation, is blood money. And they monopolize all the services that they provide. I don't think we'd have police brutality issues as if you have multiple options, free market options of police services to call, instead of just 911 or instead of whatever emergency number. Only the one, only the government line. I think if you had the option, say, hey, when I called police station whatever last time, they come here and they roughed us up and they violated our rights. I'm not calling them this time. I'm going to try competing police station who is competing for that product or that service and my money. I think right there, just that act of having the choice of going to another location, of having competition, opening up the free market into these government services, they would cease like police brutality incidences. Also, then police would really be peacekeepers. They would work for the people and not for the politicians and the people who write laws in Washington. Why is it that a police officer can pull you over at the threat of violence for not wearing a seatbelt? You're supposed to be, now in a free market society, that police officer may pull you over, but because if he writes you a fine for not wearing a seatbelt, you might not do business with them because you think that's absurd. Because the seatbelt, it should be your own decision whether you choose to be unsafe in your vehicle or not. That's the whole epitome of being free. He may actually come up to your vehicle and say, I see you don't have a seatbelt on. Just thought you should be safe, and it actually might be beneficial then. Instead of the financial parasitical way that the police are now, looking to write you a fine to collect revenue for the state. They may actually be peace officers and want to actually help you and look out for your best interest because they want to keep you as a customer. All services and products are better when they are funded voluntary. Common sense. And it's why the government is corrupt, and it is why we have wars, and it's why we have this debt. It's why we have police brutality. It's why we have unsolved rape kits. It's why we have the war on drugs. Everything stems from government having the right to violently take people's money and redistribute it. Redistribution of wealth. And then you have the nerve. You'll get those guys, those trolls. I feel like almost like they're trolls. Because the whole act when I like to talk about the non-aggression principle and taxes, it's immoral and whatever. And then you'll get that one guy who will say, well, what if stealing stuff isn't always immoral, because I can bring up a straw man argument that will probably never ever happen. And here's an argument I've actually got. What if you had a man who was in the desert, who was dying of thirst, and there was another guy in the desert, and he had a water stand, a bunch of water for sale, but the guy who was dying of thirst didn't have any money, and he stole one of the waters to keep him alive. Like, what kind of straw man argument is that, dude? Come on. Clearly, common sense says, well, yeah, if a guy literally can't give the guy a bottle of water to keep him alive, that guy's a fucking asshole. And yeah, the guy should be able to take the water to survive. But if you have to reach that hard and pull that kind of straw man argument when it comes to, hey, we should voluntarily pay for healthcare, we should voluntarily pay for police services, and all these other things should be provided if people want to pay for them. They shouldn't be forced to pay for these services and products that the government offers. You're looked at as like some kind of, oh, you don't like the poor, or you don't like whatever. Like, it's just ridiculous. You're looked at as some kind of evil capitalist. There's nothing wrong with capitalism. Capitalism is just two individuals exchanging products and services. It's a voluntary contract. There's nothing wrong with that. Now, do I have issues with, let's say you got and there are the situations that are like this in the real world, where you have a big, huge billionaire with his high rise, and next to him is slums that don't even have running water. And that billionaire has billions of dollars sitting in the bank, not putting it back into the economy, not investing it, not doing anything with it. It's just sitting there rotting. And he's getting old and dying, and he's not doing with it. And next to him, he's literally outside his condominium window. He sees the slums and people dying of thirst. Yeah, that guy's an asshole. Absolutely. Absolutely. But a better way of handling that guy, instead of the horde all wanting to vote to steal his money, is, I think, if everybody treated that guy like, dude, you're the asshole who lives next door to people that you could easily help out their thirst and literally save lives. If everyone ignored him, who would he hang out with? He'd only hang out with other rich snobs. But rich snobs need normal people to work for them. So if everybody just peacefully non-cooperated and shunned this guy in society and looked at him as scum, I feel that would be a way more effective way to dealing with these mega wealthy rich. Mega wealthy rich people have very strong egos. They usually don't get to be mega wealthy rich without being a strong ego, cutthroat, strong personality type like that. Some of them, not all of them. But you gotta stroke that ego. And if you praise these people, these multi-billionaires, when they help the poor out, if you praise them as such holy beings for doing such acts of kindness, I feel that would go a long way with them than just violently taking their money and taxing them at 80-90%, and in most cases forcing them to leave the country, taking their businesses elsewhere, creating more poverty, or disincentivizing them to even open and create multi-million-dollar businesses if you're only going to collect 10% of your wage or your earnings. Excuse me. So I don't feel that I'm coming from a real radical or far off land here. It's not utopia. People like to say anarchist, libertarian utopia, like it's some kind of magical thing that can never be achieved. And I don't think it's that magical to just simply pay for things when you want them to. We see it. Nobody forces you to go to the store and buy your groceries and which products to buy when you go there. Nobody forces you to buy the latest and greatest iPad or iPhone. You buy the services because you want to. And when you walk outside the store and there's that person begging for money, or a charity set up there saying that they're taking donations to help poor people, give them money. The left, like I said, always reels about how much they need government and they need to take care of the poor. Well, if you have that much concern, like I said, the poor will be taken care of. And it's not like, I could see you guys making an argument on the left if literally charities around the world only got like millions of dollars every year and like hardly anybody donated to them, and I'd be like, oh Jesus, well, the average individual just is so cutthroat, doesn't give a shit about anyone, that yeah, we have to take money, because if they didn't, there'd just be but I'm playing left card here. That just doesn't mean I believe in what I just said there, because I believe too there are individuals responsibility, and they should be able to thrive and try and make it themselves. I don't think people need handouts. But where was I going? I just lost my train of thought with that. So you can't disincentivize the rich, though. And the left is always about attacking the 1%, the 1%, the 1%. This 99 versus the 1%. When in reality, majority of the 1% is people who just make over $100,000 a year. The people who they're concerned with are the 0.0000 something a percentage. And a lot of those people who control majority of the planet. Here's another thing that makes me mad, is a lot of the people they're railing about, these super mega wealthies who control the vast majority of the world's population's wealth, are crony capitalists. If we went and looked at the books of how they got that money, you'd probably find through a lot of politicians' bribery, through a lot of corruption. Some of the richest people on the planet are the people who own banks. And yes, men own banks. So imagine how rich you are when you own a bank. And these are not capitalist problems, these are government problems. Because these people wouldn't have got that wealthy, had to control that much resources without the crony capitalism aspect of using the platform of government by bribing politicians to monopolize their product and services in their market, to be the only major competitions in those markets. Using government regulations to stifle out the little guy. So I see where the left comes from, where they get super mad at some of these super high-end crony capitalists. But don't get crony capitalism mixed up with the Elon Musks out there who are just billionaires who are investing their money into good ways to make humanity a better place to live, giving them technologies such as the Tesla cars and the Tesla batteries. So don't blend Elon Musk with someone like a David Rockefeller. Two different beasts there. Capitalism, but not capitalism. David Rockefeller, crony capitalism. So should I think we audit the Federal Reserve? We find out how much these politicians have been bribed out. We go look at all the paperwork and find out, and find this money in all these offshore accounts. Yeah, hold the trials. Do that. Hold them all accountable. Hold these 0.000 something 1% accountable for the money they've stolen from the masses in debt and stuff. Absolutely. But to say that you should be able to attack someone like Elon Musk, 90 or 80% of this guy's wealth, when he is creating such great ingenuity and technology for the human race, why would that man get up and be so motivated to go to work if basically all of his life work is just going to be taken away from him? That's not very fair to the individual. That's not very, very freedom-oriented and liberty-oriented. And like I said, I think we should just take a more peaceful approach to the manner of how we handle these mega rich. But I find people like Oprah Winfrey and these billionaire superclasses, that people are these zombies, these liberals and stuff, would be so quick to run up and want a picture with this woman. I never questioned her that she could actually feed a bunch of places in Africa with the money that sits in her bank account and doesn't do nothing. Because I'm not the super capitalist too. I know some anarcho-capitalists go like so hardcore. Well, I don't go so far to the right that I say that at some point I do find someone has a mental issue if they have so much money that they could physically not spend it in their lifetime or their couple lines of their family's lifetime, and choose to just throw it in an offshore account and not use it to better mankind when it's just going to do nothing. Yeah, I think those people are assholes. That's like going and taking a nice piece of prime land and then not using it. And then when other people want that land, it's like, nope. So I'm not the super anarcho-capitalist that I think that a super wealthy billionaire, some of these guys, yeah, some of them are dicks, man. Absolutely. And they should help poor people out when they can. But there are a lot of the aspects of the poor that you got to look into, is how many of these poor people have gotten themselves into those situations of being poor because of financial irresponsibilities. And you don't want to go and encourage bad financial acts and stuff. You don't want to pay people who are irresponsible either. Because obviously if these people are poor because of financial irresponsibility, and then you go and just give them a bunch more money, the wealthy just give them more money, it obviously isn't going to solve their problem. They're just going to repeat what they did before because they're financially irresponsible. So there is a fine line there that you got to draw. Yes, it's okay to help the poor. No, it's not okay to encourage some of their acts. You got to look at how they got there. Now, situations, you can, like I said, you can always pull up straw men. It's like a situation where a family is whatever, and the kids are at home, and the family, mom and dad, get into a car accident, they die, they leave the 16-year-old kid and stuff. Now he's got no family, and yeah, I think people should help those situations out. Should donate. Should help those kids get a home and look after them and stuff. Absolutely. And I think people will do that because I think people in general are pretty kind and will look after their neighbors. But I don't think we should force people to do these things. Just like I think we should leave. Do I agree with racists? Do I agree with homophobes and bigots? Do I agree with the woman who doesn't want to marry gay guys? No. But she should have a right to. Free speech is to protect hate speech. But now you see this PC culture trying to push legislation to regulate the internet and regulate hate speech and all this. Oh, these words are harmful. They're trigger words, so we need to ban them. The whole reason behind free speech is to protect the racists and the bigots. Obviously, favorable speech will never be a problem. And why is it that you need to ban these people? Just ignore them. If you're a gay person and you go and try and get a wedding cake from a Christian shop and they don't want to give you a wedding cake, go to another shop. Go to a gay shop and get your cake. Piss off. And if you reverse the role, same thing. Christians shouldn't go harassing the gays either. Just leave people alone. Stay out of each other's lives. If you're a man in a wig, in a dress, and you think you're a woman, then go in the fucking personal bathroom. Stay out of the woman's bathroom, though, because you're not a woman. Because all this PC culture has just ruined it. That Caitlyn Jenner and all this talk about tranny bathrooms and whether they should be able to go into the girls' bathrooms or not, it's utterly ridiculous. It shouldn't even be discussed. It shouldn't even be an issue on the front of newspapers. Caitlyn Jenner Hero Award or Bravery Award, or jeez. Is disgusting. It's a mental issue. And all through, if you look at the history or the psychology books, they've always understood it as a mental health issue. Now I'm getting off into the tranny thing, but I mean, I'll just wrap it up with this, because I do like to say in this comparison, we look at anorexic people. Look at an anorexic person. They're looking in a mirror, and they think they're fat, and they look terrible. But in all reality, they're super skinny, the ribs are showing, they're far from fat. But in their head, they have the idea that they're fat, and they're throwing up in the toilet. And everyone in the mental, all the doctors and everyone recognizes that person clearly has a mental health issue. That she's not fat, she's actually skinny, and she's so skinny she's actually malnutritious and hurting herself. Now, would it be a good idea to then encourage her to, yes, you do look fat and you should go throw up, and give her a award and call her brave? And to encourage that act of mental health issue? No. The same way I don't think we should encourage men who are 100% biologically a male, but for some reason in their head think that they are biologically a female, born in the wrong body, which is impossible. That then we should allow them into female bathrooms and all this other stuff. Clearly, they're not living in reality. Caitlyn Jenner should not be women getting an award for being so brave. She should actually be sent to a doctor. Or he. No, I just fell for it. He should be sent to a doctor. Because he's not living in reality. No matter how much plastic surgery he gets, no matter how much he alters his body, his genetic code, his Adam's apple, his body mass, everything that makes him, the makeup of him, will always be male. You cannot change that. Until we get to the point in technology where you could physically transport your consciousness from one biological body into a female's biological body, and only transfer the brain consciousness in doing so, that is about the only time that you could ever make the case that someone is now a woman. But I don't see many male trannies with ovaries and able to have kids and breastfeed. These are people that need help, and I don't think it's very right that we make this such a trendy and cool thing like they are, putting it on the cover of and giving him awards and making him out to be so cool for going through this procedure and being so brave for coming out. Because I think that does a lot of damage to some confused individuals who may have this mental health issue when they are younger and now think it's cool or it's trendy or it's acceptable to think this way when it's not. And nobody brings up the fact that it's only a small percentage, 20-30% or so, that are happy and actually don't have the issues they had beforehand after getting the procedure done. Most of them still go on to be depressed, and most of them still go on after the procedure to regret it and even kill themselves. And to make it pushing it like this procedure is like a fix-all, and if you just give them this procedure and then force people to pay for this procedure who morally are against it, that's okay and encouraging, and it's not. But I didn't mean to get off on a rant about trannies. Sorry about that. We started out with anarchism and stuff. But it's just all tied together. All this PC culture stuff. It's all about tearing the family apart. It's all about muddying the conversation. Just do anything to take the conversation off of government's immoral. That cop was racist because he killed that black man. Not that cop was immoral because he was enforcing immoral laws that should have never been written on the books, that had a victimless crime. That the active aggressor was the police officer and not the person that was killed, or the victim, the individual, claiming that they were the criminal. That's not issue. That's not talked about. Instead, it's racist. All these scenarios where you see these people, in most cases black, in these videos, or whatever the case may be, in these race baiting videos that you see on the news, where they're most times getting pulled over for victimless shit. Window out, sticker, no insurance, plates look funny, marijuana, drugs, and something happens, person gets shot, cop gets labeled a racist. And maybe in very few situations that is the case. But nobody wants to talk about the real problem. That the problem is the fact that, well, what gives the authority for this man in a costume with a badge to go up and enforce this bullshit law where there is no victim and this person is not harming any individual? Is this law he's enforcing even moral? Or is it a law passed by regulation or politicians in Washington, in Parliament, to keep control of the population, to collect financial revenue from the fines and stuff like that? That's never want to be talked about. Instead, he's racist. And you see, they try and take the conversation, dumb it down, and make it about this PC culture stuff because they don't want people to talk about the real things. Because the libertarian movement was doing so good at pointing out the flaws against the police. And I'm not totally anti-police, because I think that we will need police in a free society. But police that enforce rules that the customers request. That police actually do their jobs and go after violent offenders. People who have damaged people or property. And not who have not hurt a soul. So that's the problem I have with the police. I have a problem with the police because they work under a system that is inherently makes them to be thugs against peaceful people. And I feel the libertarian movement was doing so well. And we were really starting to get that point out there. And you've seen America and the country, the Western nations, finally all around the world too. You've seen them starting to really have a distaste for police. And we're like, yes, now we can start telling them why and kind of pushing them in that direction. This is why we, take that hatred toward the policemen, point them. Well, look, it's not really the policeman's fault. Some of it is because they are individuals who are making the conscious decisions to do and choose to act and do that line of work. So I'm not taking out total individual responsibility as well, but you got to know the inherent flaws in the system. But before we could get to that, what does the mass media, what is the left, and what do the people who want to remain in control do? Well, they make the conversation about race, start racial division, only cover issues where it's a white cop shooting a black male. When you can find multiple videos of black cops shooting white males, and all kinds of other situations. White cops shooting white people, but they only focused on the racial tension ones because they wanted to stir racial division. And now down into the social justice warriors and all the talk about the bathrooms and the gay rights and everything. Not that I think at some point in time we shouldn't address these issues, these social justice issues, although some of them are complete myths, but some of them may have some validity. But I think we should end the wars that result in mass casualties. I think we should end the war on drug that rips homes apart, that literally takes fathers away from their children, CPS. I think we should address these more important issues that hurt a lot more people on a daily basis as a result of government existence than the few people that might be inconvenienced or harmed from having to go in their own bathroom or not get a marriage license. You see what I'm saying? I think we should focus our priorities and our issues on the things that matter more before we start talking and bickering about the little social justice warrior issues in society. So I'm going to wrap this podcast up. This was episode number 8. And it was bringing things back to the beginning. We're 8 episodes in, but I wanted to recap again on what this podcast is about, where we come from, and what I think we should continue to rail about in the liberty movement, in the media movement, in the independent media. We got to keep pushing these points out. Try not to fall into this political correctness culture, this PC culture, social justice warrior. Try to stay off of these topics. They're fun every once in a while to talk about, to get some views and clicks. But we're falling right into what the left and what the government control wants us to do, to take the conversation off of the real issues. And be very hostile and be careful when you see these conservatives masquerading neocons trying to call themselves libertarians. Just because you're pro-legalization of marijuana does not make you a libertarian. I feel you only earn the title of libertarian unless you are for the full decriminalization of all drugs across the board, right down to heroin and meth. Because is heroin, meth a good drug? Absolutely not. Is it good for a person to sit there and smoke crack all day until he dies? Absolutely not. But the solution is not to throw that man in a cage, just to get him some medical help, mental health if the case may be. Or if he doesn't want neither, to leave the individual to make his own choices and demise. Because yeah, you can make the argument that crack is terrible for an individual, all these other drugs are bad, meth is bad, heroin's bad. But you can also make the argument that a 600-pound man eating cheeseburgers is bad, and he will die many years earlier than a healthy person because he chose to neglect his health and his weight. So should we jail people that are at McDonald's who are morbidly obese? Should we start jailing those people who drive around in those little those little things you can sit down? You know, they're so fat that they can't even use their legs anymore. They just drive around. Should we just start arresting them every time we see them with a chocolate bar? Should we arrest people for smoking cigarettes? No. People will make bad decisions. That's how we are. We're human beings. We are flawed. And you must leave people to make their own bad decisions. As long as they're not going to affect anyone else, then they must learn their lessons. And that's the thing about life. Is it takes bad decisions and making those bad decisions sometimes to learn your lesson. Some people don't. Some people's bad decisions lead to their demise. But that's how I feel how nature works, of weeding out the weak and allowing the capable and the strong to survive. And it's why our species has prospered and has been a success and is still around while many other species went extinct. We must encourage the strong. We must encourage the bright. These are the people that should be having children. Not the woman on welfare with a massively low IQ having about 6 kids and no daddy. Dumb people outbreeding the smart. It's not good, guys. We're going to be living in the movie Idiocracy. If we allow this PC culture, if we allow these weak people to run amok. You can't always give people handouts. And the left always wants to help people. Help. We got to help out. Well, there's a lot of people that need help, and there's a lot of people who don't deserve help. And that's why you can't just do a universal minimum wage or minimum earnings, or every person on the planet should have this much money like they want to try and get past. You do that, there's people out there who are irresponsible who will just use that money for the more bad stuff. Help the ones who truly need help. And it's terrible to say, but it's how we've got here today. Let the weak, the deranged, the psychopaths, let them destroy themselves. If the guy wants to smoke heroin all day and kill himself, should we try and get him help? Yes. Is it a terrible, tragic situation? Yes. If he refuses to get help, should we force him against his will to keep him alive? Absolutely not. You can't force human beings that way. So get back to the basics. And we need to structure our society around anarchism. And I'm just going to leave, once again, in closing here, I'm going to read off this definition of anarchism on the Webster Dictionary: a political theory holding all forms of government authority to be unnecessary and undesirable, and advocating a society based on voluntary cooperation and free association of individuals and groups. The advocacy or practice of anarchism principles. Let's structure society around moral principles and not what politicians and criminals in Washington deem as moral. I'm your host for the Anarchist podcast. This is episode number 8. We'll see you guys in episode number 9. And make sure, like I said, to donate in the description box below. Bitcoin wallet there if you want to see this podcast grow and to turn into something beautiful. So hope to see you guys around some more. Leave your comments in the comments section. Love to get some criticism, feedback. Trying not to hash on the topics too much and just repeating myself. I know someone left a comment saying I do that a lot, so thanks for the criticism. Trying to check that. And for the trolls and stuff who leave comments in the comment section, I don't even address you people because there are idiots and trolls out there. There are people who have such a low IQ that are basically drooling on their keyboards, mental retardation, typing away their filth and their hatred, and you got to ignore those people. You can go under Neil deGrasse Tyson videos. You can go under Sam Harris videos. You can go under Lawrence Krauss videos. You can go under some of the most genius brains and minds on the planet who are nothing but humble, and you go underneath their videos and they're full with vile trolls. So you can't please everyone. And to you trolls, if you guys just put as much effort into trolling as you did to fix society, where we might be, who knows? Because I know I do not wake up, and I have never woke up and thought, hey, let me go put some negative comments under people's videos. It's not, I'm above that. That's so below me. Nothing honorable in that. There's nothing cool in it. It's stupid. Dumb people, I feel, do that stuff. So have at it. And realize when I read your comments and your trolls, I realize that I'm dealing with someone with a very small intellect. Not on my level, and capable of carrying out rash conversations. Instead, he decides to troll. Instead of having a rational conversation. So, I'll leave it with that, guys. See you guys in episode number 9. I think we'll get into MGTOW and whatnot. Some interesting stuff. Been watching some interesting podcasts on that. So, we might get into MGTOW in the next episode. We will see. See you guys in that one. Signing off. The Anarchist Podcast. Peace.